Okay, so this is a concrete floor. So when you put mud on a concrete floor, you need to bond. Shower, especially it's going to be a steam shower. I've already got some board up, and there's going to be a linear drain here. This is off center. It's 24 this way, and it's 20 that way. So it's not going to be in the center. Nothing I can do about that. But here's the thing. If you do foam trays, then the surface that you put the foam tray on has to be flat and it has to be level. Otherwise, you can't put the foam tray in. So that means you would have to level this floor and get it and prep it for a foam tray. We got tile here, which is well bonded. This is where the curb used to go, and that's where the pre-slope for the vinyl liner is. That's actually surprising that they actually did a pre-slope. So with the foam tray, everything has to be flat and level. With mud, it doesn't matter where the drain is. Doesn't matter how flat or uneven the floor is, because as long as it's well bonded and everything is solid, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to put my mud on here, slope it to the drain, done. Okay, so I am prepped and ready for mud. This is my template for here, for this foam tray that's going to replace this drain. Is going to fit in there. So to make it easy to work, I just make a template. That foam is perfectly level both ways, and then I'm going to take that out and I'll be able to fit in this drain. So I got my screed on the back there, and I got a piece of wood here so that I can screed across the template and the back foam. That way I'm going to get a perfectly flat pitch going this way. This is perfectly level this way and this way. And then I have my other foam cleat over here so I can screed down to over here. And that's about a foot. So that cleat is about a 1/4 inch, slightly more than a 1/4 inch above the foam. That cleat there is about, because it's a little over 5 feet, so it's about 1 3/8 inches above that, so I get a nice flat pitch all the way down. So I'm going to use thin set to bond the mud to the floor. I'm actually going to use an A118.15 mortar. I need it to bond to the ceramic tile, this porcelain tile. So the A118.15 will do the trick. So I'm going to mix the mud and screed this up. First I'm going to do back here and get this all done, and then I'm going to move this way like this. Okay, so this is a concrete floor. So when you put mud on a concrete floor, you need to bond the mud, the deck mud, to the substrate, the concrete. In this case, it's the concrete and then the tile. So I need that to bond. So I'm spreading thin set, the appropriate thin set, like I said, an A118.15 mortar thin set on the floor, so that when I put my mud in, it will be bonded to the substrate. The reason why I'm using a high polymer content mortar is because, as I said, I have that porcelain tile. I want to make sure that the mortar bonds to that. If this had been all concrete, then you could have just used any kind of thin set. Even an unmodified thin set would have worked. But because of the tile, I'm using a high polymer content mortar. If this was plywood, then you would use first you would put down top paper, and then you would put wire lat down, and that would be an unbonded or a floating mud floor. So the procedure is slightly different when you're doing concrete as opposed to plywood, but the actual screeding and installing the mud is the same once you have your thin set down or your tar paper. If you're doing over plywood, obviously you can put your tar paper down all at once and your wire lath. When you're doing the over concrete, obviously you're going to have to do a section at a time so that the thin set doesn't skin over and not bond. You'll see that as I move along in this video. So setting up the cleats on the wall so that you get a level line at the wall makes this whole process a little bit easier. If you have a point drain, you can do the same thing, but you would do that all the way around on all four walls so that you could screed off that to your drain. Because I have a linear drain here, and I have a flat pitch from one end to the other, and you don't really need to do the sidewalls because they would have to be on an angle. But anyway, so looking at this mortar, you can see that there are a few dry spots. Depending on how well you mix it, I use a bucket auger and mix it that way. It makes it a lot easier. You want to make sure as you put your mud in that you actually mix it really well, and that if you got some dry spots like I have here, just mix it in and it'll be fine. Just make sure that you get it all damp, and once it dries, it'll be hot. So at the beginning of this video, I was saying that if you wanted to use a foam tray on this, if you don't know how to do mud, the first thing you would have to do is make sure that your floor is level. So that would mean that you would have to pour some self-leveler on the floor to get it flat and level. And then you could install your foam tray on top of the leveler. You can't install a foam tray on an uneven surface, and because of the pitch that's in the foam, the floor has to be level. Otherwise, the water won't drain. So you got to make sure the floor is flat. So that's going to take time. So number one, you have to get your self-leveler, and then you have to mix it, and then you have to pour it, then you have to wait for it to dry. Once you've done that, you're going to have to get your tray. You're going to have to find the right size tray. Probably going to, this is a very big shower. It's like 4 feet by 7.5 feet. So it's quite a long shower. So the foam tray is going to cost you a substantial amount of money. Then you have to fit that tray to the area, and you have to make sure you fit it also to the drain. And so that's going to take quite some time. It's going to take hours to do that. It's not going to be something that you're just going to cut a tray in and put it in. You're going to have to prep first, fit, and then install. So that's going to take more than a day, because you have to put your self-leveler down, you have to wait for it to dry, and then you're going to have to install your tray. So you could wait around and wait for the leveler to dry, but sometimes, depending on ambient conditions, that could be quite some time. This whole floor, to install this whole floor, now I mean from very start, arriving on the job, I arrived at the job at 7:30, I was done with this floor at 11:30. So that is about 4 hours. So in that 4 hours, what did I do? I arrived on the job. I had to set up and get some water. I needed to fill a few buckets of water so that I would have that to mix my mud, and also clean my tools and whatever else I needed it for. So once I had my mixing station all set up and all my tools ready, I had to make an adjustment on the foam tray. I left it and I thought it was good, and then when I came back, I checked it and I saw that I needed to make an adjustment on it. So that took a little bit of time. After I did that, I had to put my cleats on the opposing wall, so I ripped down some foam on my table saw so that they would be perfectly straight, and then I used my laser level to set the foam at the correct height. So that took a little bit of time. Next, I had to mix some thin set and get that ready for installing the mud. So anyway, so all in all, probably this is a big shower floor. This is a big mud job. It's for as far as mud goes, it's 4 feet by 7.5 feet. So this is a big shower floor. So it took me to actually install the mud and mixing in between. Now that's me doing everything, no helper, no nothing. It took me about, I would say, from the first bucket of mud that I threw into the shower to the very end where I finished, and it took me about 2.5 hours. Now that also included a conversation with the homeowner when he showed up, and we talked about some of the details about this shower. And also in that time was all the cleanup, cleaning up all the mess that I made on the floor, and washing my tools and getting everything back into the truck and packing things up that I'm not going to need anymore on the job because it's only related to installing the mud. So all in all, it's actually not a very long, not a very time-consuming process if you know what you're doing. Once you get set up and you mix your mud, it actually goes fairly quickly. If this had been a regular shower with a point drain and maybe 5 feet by 32 inches,
I would have been done with the installing the mud probably in about an hour, hour and a half. Okay, so I got the short side done, so now I got to do the long side. Normally when I do linear drains, I like to have them up against the wall so that you only have one pitch and you don't have to pitch two ways, but in this case they didn't want to move the drain, so this is what we get. Another problem, it's going to work perfectly fine, it just makes it a little bit more complicated as far as pitching the mud. So in a minute you're going to see that I'm using a piece of wood. I made sure that it was perfectly straight, and I would have liked for it to be a little bit wider. Just make sure you don't bend it in the middle. So I was being very careful to make sure that I kept it straight and flat all the time. I would suggest if this is your first time or you don't have a lot of experience doing mud, that you use something a little stronger so that if you put pressure on it, it doesn't bend that and give you a belly in your mud. So just be aware of that.
that's it. All done.